As brand new liveaboards, it's been a steep learning curve to try and get our heads around everything that needs to be done and all the things that are going to make us tick. So I guess when you think about it, it's a lot different to when you're on land because, you know, your house isn't going to float away and your shops are, you know, right next door. So when it comes to planning, how are you going to live aboard? It takes it to a whole new level. And so there's a few tips and techniques that I've been able to cobble together that are helping our life be a little bit easier on board. And for those of you that know me, I do quite like a spreadsheet. So they're all spreadsheet based because it gives me some sense of control over how to keep things in order and have some sort of system when it doesn't feel like there's a lot of control here at the minute. So we've put together this video for others who might be in a similar literal boat, who are looking to find a way to help make things a little bit easier. So if there's anything in here that helps you out, then that's a bonus. So here's the 5 things that we've done to try and make our lives a little bit easier. Okay, so number 1 is the maintenance checklist. We created a spreadsheet, of course we did, to keep track of the regular jobs that we need to do on the boat. And we did this for a couple of reasons. One, so we don't forget to check or to maintain certain items because old person memory loss is real, people. And 2, because we wanted to make sure that the jobs were spread across the year and it didn't become this massive task and everything was all lumped in together. So it kind of just makes it easier to tick them off as we go along. I'll show you the spreadsheet and take you through how it works. Okay, so this is the boat maintenance checklist and we've set it up whereby it's a red and black system. So if it's been done, it's black, and if it's due to be done, it's in red. And we've split out all of the jobs across the different months. So for example, coming up in May, we've got to do a bilge bump test yet. We've got to do a deck wash. The galley water filter is due to be changed. We've got a cat, so the vents will get cat hair in them. So I need to clean those out to make sure that nothing overheats. We need to do the clears. I've already done the outdoor cushions. The power banks need to be charged up and we do that every month just to make sure that they're ready to go because they're part of our grab bag kit. We needed a new battery for the dolphins, so we did that a couple of days ago, and we are due for a man overboard drill this month. So once the job has been done, as I said, it changes to black so that we know that it's been done, but also weirdly it's kind of nice to be able to check those off. And then, you know, the following month, there's a different group of things to be done. So it kind of makes it into little bite-sized pieces and doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. I've also created a notes page where I've listed out all of the different items that we purchased, what the install date was, how often those things need to be replaced or rotated through, and then what the due date is. And if there's a due date that's coming up or nearby, then that gets marked in red to flag it that they need to be added to the next year's spreadsheet tab. So I've got 2026 in here already, ready to go. They're all of the things that need to happen. But at the moment, we're just trekking through each of the ones on 2025. And so we just make a plan, divvy it up, decide who's going to do the things, and then pop some of those items onto, we've got a whiteboard calendar, which I'll talk about in a minute, and they go in there so that they don't get forgotten and I don't have to look at this sheet again until the following month and mark off what needs to be done. So that's really helpful for us to not forget to do stuff, especially things like remembering to when do the flares need to be replaced. You know, the helm seat does need a wax because there's a video that I did on cleaning that with exit mold. It was the only way to get it out, but obviously we now need to keep it well maintained or it's going to fall apart on us. So it's little things like that that this particular spreadsheet really helps with. So number 2 is the expenses spreadsheet. And we've only just set it up, but the idea of it makes me feel better because it'll give us a better sense moving forward where the funds are going and what we're spending our money on, and maybe help with budgeting that moving forward. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is the spreadsheet that we use for expenses, and it's the same kind of spreadsheet that I use for expense tracking in my business. So I'm kind of in the groove of using something like this and filling it in every month. So I've got I guess a good discipline when it comes to that. But it's set up where you drop in each of the things that you've spent money on, you put your expense into this column, and then there's a chart of accounts code, which then corresponds and drops in the amount into the correct column over here. So we've got groceries and alcohol, eating out, what we're spending on taking care of the cat, fuel, Starlink, transport, marina charges, subscriptions, and on it goes through to supplies, etc. So it, similar to the maintenance checklist, it works on a red-black. So if it's expected to come, so if you look down into the following months, we're expecting some subscription charges to come in. Once they've been paid, they get turned into black. So each of the different things that we spend money on will turn into that. And then that means that at the end of the year, we can go back and see, well, where did the money go and what did we spend it on? And of course, the chart of accounts that I use suits me for, all of those different areas, but, it could be adapted really for anything, for anyone. But I really like the idea of this because what I want to be able to do is go back over it at the end of the year and work out, well, how much did I actually spend, and did I go too overboard in some areas, and is there somewhere where we can rein that back in? And then also just allowing to allocate, well, how much does it actually cost to run this boat, and really get a handle on it that way. So hopefully that will help us into the future, and if there's something in here that you think is helpful for you, then by all means. Okay, so number 3 is another spreadsheet. I know, but know your strengths, people. So this is our logbook. We have tried several different iterations, tried paper copies, we've tried different versions of this, but this one's been tweaked to the point where I feel like it's really starting to work for us. And I really like the idea of keeping it. Obviously, you need to have one, but keeping it in this manner means we can go back over it. It's easy to reference. If I need to search for, God, when were we in whatever the anchorage was, I can type it into the search bar and it'll bring it straight up. I'm not flicking through pages. And I really like the idea that it's kind of easy to use, so I keep filling it in. And I'm doing it all the time, which means it's current and being treated the way that a logbook should be. And I wasn't doing that before. I was finding it difficult and cumbersome and too much effort. So obviously this isn't for longer passages because it doesn't have the longs and lats in it, but it's really good in terms of keeping track of the miles that we're doing, the swell conditions, the wind, and it's a really good planning tool for us for when we say, all right, well, we're here now, we'd like to get to the next anchorage. How long will it take us to get there? So, let's look at that. So for example, we're in Pancake Creek right now. We are thinking about going to Boyne Creek next. The blue columns are the ones that we need to complete in order for the spreadsheet formulas to work. So it's 25 nautical miles to get to Boyne Creek, so we filled that in. Roughly, we do about, on average, just over 4 knots if the wind isn't too hectic. That's just a nice cruising along speed for us. So if we do 4.3 knots, then it'll take nearly 6 hours to get there. So then we can do the calcs of, all right, well, What's the tides like at Boyne Creek? Like, is it a hard anchorage to get into? Should we not be going in on the low? When is the low tide for Boyne? And therefore, managing our arrival time around that. So do we have to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning to get there, or, you know, can we have gentlemen's hours and leave closer to 8? But that then gives us the information that we need to be able to make a decision around that. And then we're also able to drop in the wind that's expected, you know, where's it coming from, what are the knots of that, and the swell, which if you've seen the earlier video, it's not just putting in the swell, but also the frequency, because that matters, turns out, live and learn. And so we put all of that in when it is going to matter for if you're going through a bar, or if you're staying in an anchorage that, you know, it could bring you a cropper. It's worth noting that down. So we put all of that in, and that then helps us when we're going to go on to the next place. The other thing it lets us do is put in some trip notes, so we can talk about what happens, so if there's things that we need to know about before we get there. But this one talks about if the swell's more than 30 centimeters or 0.3 of a meter, then the anchorage is okay, but otherwise it's too rolly. I did mention the worst one so far in there. It's turning easterly overnight, southwesterly in the morning at 4.5, so that will be fine. We'll rough it for a couple of hours until the weather changes, because that will be more comfortable for us. So just notes that you can keep. And then I also keep track in a final column of when we're getting shore water, when we're doing a shop, when we're actually doing the washing. I don't know, just so I can keep track of how long does it normally take us to do those things, because like I said, as a new liveaboard, I just don't know those things. So it's a good way for us to keep track. And I kind of like too that on this I can do some other calculations, and I've got them in here, and I'll show you because they're there, but I don't know, call me an idiot, but I quite like doing it. So when we're going into a new anchorage, I will do the tide times for where we're coming from and where we're going into, so I've got a good sense of what are we working with. For example, when we were trying to get into Lady Elliot and Lady Musgrave, their tide times are gone now from in here, but I was listing them all out and working out, well, ideally we want to go in on a high tide for Lady Musgrave, so we would need to leave wherever we were at 2 in the morning in order to make sure we hit that high tide mark. So I do my rough planning on here rather than on sheets of paper, so it just helps me keep track. And then once I've got my head around it, I can then transpose that to another whiteboard that I'll also talk about, because that's another one of our things that we do. So it's a good little planning tool for me to mess with that and get a sense of where should we stay and for how long should we stay, and where do we move to next. And then I've also dropped in the rule of 12ths into this and made that a formula calculation. And while I can do it on a piece of paper and am able to, maths is just not my strong point. So for it to be a quick, hey, we're just coming into an anchorage now, what's the likely depth of where it's going to be based on what the tide times are now, or how much lower is it going to get from where we are now, I can come in here, drop in the tide times for where we're at. That'll automatically tell me what the range is, what the time range is. I drop in the depth that we're sitting on at the time, and then it will automatically calculate for me where the depths are going to go. So if you look here, at 9:23 in the morning, the high water was 3.42 meters, so that's just transposing that in there automatically. And then it does the rule of 12ths for me automatically to give me the low water at 1539 of 0.52 of a meter. So if we come in at 1230, for example, and the depth that we're wanting to anchor in is 4 meters, for example, you just put 4 meters in there, and then it will tell you that by the time you hit the low tide, it'll come down to 2.55 for under 2.55 meters. And we need, well, we have a 1.3 meter draft, so we want water underneath that. So it's just helpful to know when you're turning up at a place, when I can't do that in my head yet. And maybe other people can. After years of this, I'm sure I'll just mentally be able to do it all. But at the minute, having to understand all of this is so overwhelming. So this is helpful for me. So laugh all you will, but I find that really handy to be able to just quickly type it in and go, that's going to get too low for us. The minimum that we can anchor in is, you know, for example, you know, in this scenario, if we were coming in at, you know, 2.5 meters, we wouldn't have enough underneath us. So we might say, well, if you know, 20 centimeters isn't a lot underneath, I'm sure it'll be fine. Probably want a little bit more than that. I'd ideally like a meter under. But if we anchored in 3 meters, we wouldn't touch, if that makes sense. And that helps my brain and makes me feel like I'm being more helpful. So that's another one of the ones that we use.
Okay, so number 4 is a VHF instruction cheat sheet. And we created this to have the 3 different types of call: Mayday, Pan, and the general. And when I first got my VHF license, it was a great quick read before making the call to ensure I was kind of doing it right. But we also use it when we have others aboard as part of our induction, in case they need to step in, just in case, you know, we're not able to use the radio. And it means that they can have some sense of calm about them and to know exactly what to say and what to do should something happen and they need to step in and use the radio. So I quite like that. It sits up at our helm and it's right there at hand, and when we do induction with new people coming on board, we give them a quick run through and show them where it is, so that if the time comes and they do need to say it, at least they'll know what to do. And number 5 is not a spreadsheet, surprise, surprise, but it is a couple of whiteboards that we use that we find really helpful. And the first one is here at the helm, and it's just attached here where we can just look down from the helm and see what's here. Primarily it's used for tide times, so I like to write down all the tide times for the length of stay that we're going to have, so that I can work out the range, and that helps with giving Jason what he needs for the anchor chain scope, but also for what depth that we need to make sure that we are in, so that we don't hit the ground. We also put things in there like what's the VHF station for the Coast Guard, that sits up the top, sunset, sunrise, and at the minute we've got a bit of battery stuff going on, so we've got some levels there, and then which tanks have water and don't. So it's a really good reference point for us when, you know, we're underway or at anchor and able to have something that we can quickly reference, because again, gosh, old people memory, it's really a thing. So it's really handy to be able to just come out and see that, especially, you know, when we want to take the tender out and go for a fish, we can just have a quick look and make sure that it's got the right depth for us to get through. And then the second one we've got hiding down here, a little bit down stairs. I'm not sure if it's going to be bright enough. Let's see if it is. I might turn on a light. That helps a little bit. And this one's just the monthly planner, so we sort of write down where we've been, where we think we might go, and then it's got the little bits, like I said, up the top where, you know, what's due this month. So I kind of add stuff. We'll do the power banks here in the middle. I've got to change my contact lenses. Bass is due here, and testing the bilges, and Mother's Day, don't forget that. So it's a handy little reference point that we have just inside as we come around the corner. You know, it's easy for us to review that. So they're the things we do. I hope that's been of some help to others. You know, it's a really tricky thing coming on board for the first time and living here and having to remember everything. It's frankly a bit overwhelming. So these tools that we've popped in are helping to try and get some sort of sensibility in amongst all the chaos. And I'm sure as we go through, we'll find ways to refine those, and maybe there'll be more spreadsheets into the future. But if something there was helpful to someone else, well, that's great, because we had to do a lot of searching to find stuff that helped make sense of everything for us. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.